Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me, Miss Uduak, host of the African Music Law Show, on our 163rd episode. Super excited that you are here with me. Several logistics things to know up front. If you want to leave a comment, simply do so in the comment section, wherever it is that you may be watching: LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter. And it will show me here. I'll pull it up into the stream and people will be able to see it. And I'll also be able to address whatever questions you have. Super excited about this episode. This episode is yours truly, really highlighting some of the key stories in Africa's entertainment industry that have made global headlines, and sort of giving my discussion, my commentary, legal commentary, and my overall view on the business side of things with respect to those stories. Before we get started, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. So good to have you. We have been going for quite a while, almost 10 years now, in terms of the brand on the content side on the website. And then the podcast has been since 2014. We're, again, 163rd episode. Our focal and a key goal here is to just empower the African artist. And that's broadly speaking, right? So what does that mean? It means specifically that we're all about the business of law, of entertainment, of just really enlightening our audience, our artists particularly, and we do so through several methods. One method is to pull in the experts, industry professionals that can share their insights on what's going on in the industry, and of course also highlight some of our key executives. Create a pipeline where you're really seeing people that are being groomed for decision making, and to the degree they're not necessarily where they need to be in terms of, maybe on that global level, they are building, to get there. And then for those already on that global level, bringing them in as well to give their insights, etc. And we don't limit it to, you just have to be African. It's literally across the pool. If you have something really, really important for our audience and you want to share your knowledge, we want to have you on the show to share that insight. So we've interviewed everyone from the UK to South Africa to, the US, across different markets. We want to hear what you have to say. So here's how to reach out to us specifically. If you have a inquiry, you want to be on the show as a guest, or you have any kind of feedback you want to share with us, email info@africamusiclaw.com. You can sign up for our newsletter and just simply go to africamusiclaw.com. No N in the Africa, y'all. africamusiclaw.com to subscribe specifically to our weekly newsletter. And of course, when it comes to the podcast, you can find us across all podcast streaming platforms, wherever you get your podcast. Again, excited about the show, ready to get it started very, very soon. In the meantime, just going to put some of the banners across so you all know. So we've talked about the newsletter. That's how you can subscribe. And of course, don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts as well. And of course, as I said, leave your comments so that we can really pull in what you have to say. So officially, before I get started, let me tell you my background and why it's relevant to also share that here. I'm a fashion and entertainment lawyer. I've been practicing for 20 years here in California. I do deal making, so a lot of transactional related work, and I do a lot of litigation work as well, which means I'm in the courtroom as well and do those courtroom battles. It's important to know that when I address legal issues here, I'm not your lawyer. I know you'd want me to be, but if that's the case, visit my website at fashionentlaw.com and set up a consultation there. This is strictly for my publishing business, African Music Law, that you are watching right now. Strictly for informational purposes only. And it's not legal advice. It's just information, legal information. So when we get to and hit the key issues on defamation and copyright and some other cases we're talking about today, just that caveat and that warning. So I am, I think, officially ready to begin with our first discussion I want to have with you all. So let's start first with this. And that is Rihanna and ASAP Rocky attending Wizkid's Made in Lagos concert in LA. Now, what from my end, frankly speaking, it would be, okay, who cares? Like, really? I mean, it's great, it's awesome, but who cares? From my end, the kind of news source that I vet, etc., it'll just be, okay, that's nice, that's sweet. But really, it's a monumental moment. And the reason why it is for several reasons that I want to talk about. First of all, who would have thought that global headlines, all the major news networks would report about Rihanna and ASAP Rocky attending a Nigerian artist concert performing in LA. We have come a long, long way. I was trying to pull it up, didn't get a chance to put it up for you, but in about this time, October 2011, I made a prediction. I gave 13 reasons in 2011 why Nigerian music would be mainstream in America. So when you have major global celebrities attending a Nigerian artist's performance in LA, and that makes global headlines, it's a big deal. And in case you're not aware of the particular track we're talking about or the particular artist, Wizkid is an artist from Nigeria. He's slowly becoming a contemporary music icon. And currently, right now, his song Essence has been just Essence featuring Thames, a fellow Nigerian. There's the original version, and then there's the remix version, which has Justin Bieber on it. Justin Bieber even had to ask to jump on that track, right? So, several accomplishments. The song first went, the original one first went gold, and now it's just recently gone platinum in the US. In Canada, it's certified gold. And the gatekeepers of American culture and global culture when it comes to music, one of who is Ebro Darden, just recently said that that song is Essence. The song is titled Essence. You can find it on Spotify, across all major streaming platforms, music streaming platforms. But that song is the song of the summer. And he even says it's in contention to, or a contender to become, a contender to become the song of the year. Wizkid has so many, many successful tours, including his current tour in the US, wrapping it up. He was even locally here where I'm at in Sacramento. He's in LA, he's all over the place. And also, what's significant about the song, and you also had Ebro mention that, and I think it's something to underscore for every creative watching this right now, but particularly artists, right? You can either waste your time, and I say waste deliberately, trying to knock at the gate of the people who are the gatekeepers of culture and say, hear me, hear me, hear me, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, please help me, help me, help me, help me. Or you can go to the streets, connect with the street, that street team, that street culture, and let the streets buzz with your music as part of your marketing and promotions strategy, especially when you don't have the budget to put behind that. And if you do that, then it gradually goes, as Wizkid's song, for example, gradually goes across Nigeria, then across the continent of Africa, then the UK, all the streets pushing it, right? And then later on, you now have the clubs. Then you now have all kinds of different events and event organizers demanding for that, and hiring the artists to entertain. Then, of course, you've got the streaming part that's pulled into it. Ultimately, what happens, it gets to the gatekeeper, so that even radio is not the first to break the song. Radio is now saying, if we want to stay current, we've got to play the song, right? And Ebro underscored that as well, and it's something I talk about all the time, whether it's on the blog or certainly also on the podcast, right? So the culture really moved the song and brought it to the forefront, to the point where the world noticed it, made, and has and continues to make the Billboard charts. And now we're talking about it potentially even being the song of the year. So really, really put that in your marketing and promotions, toolbox for talents, particularly artists, paying attention to this. And it cuts across film, fashion, the arts generally. That just pay attention to it. It's not always that you have to go to the gatekeepers of culture, which we already know is really, really breaking down now. You really, really need to think strategically and look at all sides in order to get your music in front of your audience, especially in this day and age where we're having a lot of technological tools to allow you to do that across all streaming platforms, among others, and just standalone companies that are building tools where it's direct to fan, direct to fan, direct to fan. You've got to definitely tap into it and use it for your own benefit. So that's the first talk that we are having. The Rihanna and ASAP Rocky attending Wizkid's making Lagos concert strictly for underscoring that who would have thought that it would happen, at least to others. I knew it was going to happen, but the fact that it is happening now, and particularly you're seeing such an amazing push for just the global recognition of African culture in all facets. I think the best is yet to come. We haven't even started, you guys. I predict, Yes, and well, it's been recorded. Um, I predict in the nearest future, your top 10 on the Billboard charts will be one African artist after another. And we're already seeing it. So the best is yet to come. If you haven't gotten with the program yet, I encourage you to really do get with the program because that's what we're on right now. All right, so let's talk about the next thing that's of interest to me and I think would be of interest to you based on the back end and what we're seeing with the things you guys are interested in hearing about. So this is Christine Osazuwa, who recently joined Pollen, and specifically Pollen out of the UK. Pollen is a relatively new music tech type company venture happening in the UK. They've received VC funding of roughly about $100 million, and her goal would be, or her specific role there would be as a strategy director responsible for curating global live music and travel experiences. Again, one of the things that's really cool about this particular executive is that she has experience both in the US, the UK, and Sweden with Warner Music and various other tech companies. With the tech companies, part of her work has been working on data insights, data analytics to drive campaigns that have been successful for artists. Now, why am I highlighting this person who maybe you've never heard of or don't know? Because I want to also further underscore the point I was already talking about with the Wizkid situation, right? One of the things you'll start noticing also, if you haven't already, is this rise of the Afro beats and African entertainment culture on a regional and global level is not incidental or coincidence of some sorts, right? It is deliberate. And part of what I'm noticing, if you haven't noticed already, are those who straddle two cultures, right? African culture, Western culture, usually first or second or third generation immigrant children of African heritage, are now, especially in the US, start paying attention on the back end. You might not even know by looking at the names of some of these executives because historically, it used to be some people thought their names were alluded to African to whatever to use their actual birth names. So they would go by English names. But I'm seeing a lot more of these executives not only embracing their African identities or whatever the identity, Caribbean, etc., but another thing I'm noticing is they understand the sound, right? Because that's their culture, that's who they are, and they're embracing those identities to truly then take this talent that we have to bring it to the forefront of here's where the movement is going, here's where the trends is going, here's where you need to be paying attention to. So some of them are now the ones in those executive roles at the majors, right? And that is having a big push and big influence. So I think it's pretty cool to see Christine, who has had, interesting and important roles with the majors, now moving to Poland and what she's going to be doing there. And all eyes should be on her. Very interesting. And the company as well, from the investments to everything else that's going on. All right. So I'm emphasizing it for that. Let's go to the next story I want to highlight. All right. Gresham Rights Management expanding into West Africa. This was an interesting one for me. I don't know if you all are familiar with Gresham Rights. It's been it's a rights management company. It's out of Johannesburg, music licensing, direct licenses to a lot of music users. And what was interesting to me with the story is that they've teamed up with Purple Blue Entertainment um, to launch their company, GRM West Africa. I was interested in the story because from a transactional and business side and knowing the person behind Chinedu Chukwuji, that is behind the Purple Blue Entertainment, it was interesting to me that the relationship is still focused on GRM West Africa. If the two companies are really coming on par together, it would seem that the name, first of all, of this, it appears some sort of joint venture, should have Purple Entertainment, encompassed in it. But notwithstanding that, let's say it doesn't, because of maybe in terms of the what exactly GRM is bringing is a lot more. I'm just intrigued with the expansion And I want to see what exactly happens. The reason why that's of attention to me is over and over again, we keep seeing a little tension between South Africa and Nigeria, right? So, and a big part of it is that you have South Africa having more of a stronger infrastructural system and being longstanding when it comes to entertainment and music. They might not be dominating globally the way Nigeria is, but when it comes to infrastructure, certainly some of their infrastructure can even match and is on par with what we have here in the West. Nigeria is a different situation, right? Doesn't have the infrastructure per se, but very entrepreneurial driven, very business minded driven. And of course, we can see that with just looking at the numbers. So over and over again, you'll have, let's say, we do have the majors that are setting up shops in Nigeria. They hire the locals or the diasporans who are returning back, and they have them, become heads of a lot of their companies. But they are often headquartered, some of these majors headquartered in South Africa. And often you're having those executives in Nigeria still report to South Africa when their country and their systems are completely different. In this case, it's sort of different because we now have a locally owned South African company, but they're doing business in what appears to be equal footing with a Nigerian company. But notwithstanding that, it's still overwhelmingly the South African company expanding its brand name, Gresham Rights Management, into the Nigerian, other West African space that the Nigerian company is going to be overseeing and handling. I just think that's interesting, given over and over again, we keep hearing the complaint about sort of like not actual balance when you're talking about how a lot of this deal making is taking place and what ends up happening. So I hope their relationship can last long. I hope that it's fruitful, but that already to me is a little bit of a concern given the continuous, concerns we hear over and over on that front. So if you have comments, please feel free to leave, or if you have other things, your questions you want to ask, happy to answer them. Feel free to leave them, and happy to answer them on the show. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to begin talking about Tiwa Savage, and then we're going to get to Two-Face and Chris Brown and wrap it up. So let's talk about Tiwa Savage and her claim that she is being blackmailed over a sex tape. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch Tiwa Savage, who is an artist out of Nigeria, has built a lot of traction, is now signed to Universal. Well, she was based out of LA, returned to Nigeria, built a grassroots following there, and then overall has been able to now get a more of a global recognition, or slowly but surely. Anyway, in recent times, she was on doing her radio rounds, has a new song coming up, and she was on Angie Martinez and revealed that unfortunately there is someone who is attempting to blackmail her with a sex tape. And she doesn't necessarily say that it is an actual sex tape, but it's an intimate sexual, it appears to be intimate sexual time she shared with her current partner that she's dating, according to her, on that particular interview. Now, what's interesting to me is, so she says, you know what, I'm not going to, I showed my manager this, I showed basically my team, and it's like, what are we going to do? And then I thought, well, I'm not going to pay for this like the blackmailer wants, because once I pay, then I'll keep paying, and then they might even just release it anyway. So what's the point? I'm not going to let someone blackmail me. I think that's really good. I think it's important to I think that's powerful, right? Before, Tiwa Savage has had a lot of interesting, interesting, I would say, reputation management issues, right? And over time, she always manages to somehow get ahead or get in front of that story, right? The whole chaotic breakup with her ex-husband, who doubled as her manager, was just through the roof, right? But she was able to somehow get in front of the story, even though he had initially put out negative content about her. In this instance as well, you see her doing that. And there's several ways, and we're going to see when we go to the Two-Face situation, there's several ways to handle reputation management, right? So there's the school of thought that the story gets out, you just let it do what it does, simmers, and ultimately it'll just like, go away. Then there's the other one of no, you directly respond. The second method, you directly respond to any kind of crisis that comes, because if you leave it, it can just blow out, and then you're not able to take that power out of it, and then it can really just destroy you and your career. And then there's a third type of approach, right? Which is, okay, it's going to come out. Before it comes out, get ahead of it. And so that's what you've seen Tiwa Savage do, get ahead of the story. Now, what I'm intrigued about is, according to the reports, right, alleged reports, and it appears her statement too, to Angie Martinez in that interview she recently conducted. So how did that sex tape get out? According to the reports, as I said, apparently it was through her partner, who got on Snapchat and accidentally leaked it, and then realized that, oh my gosh, I accidentally put the sex tape out, and then immediately deleted it. But it was too late, because somebody else had already, or others have already, gotten a copy of it, and then of course proceed now to try to, unfortunately, go after her and blackmail her. So I've addressed that. I think it's very cool and awesome that she's taking control of the narrative and saying, you're not going to blackmail me, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm intrigued to see down the line is what happens if the relationship she currently is with her partner doesn't work out. Is it going to then be, oh, no, that was a deliberate thing he did after all, as opposed to accident, right? That's a key thing, because once you start dealing with that, and the reason why I raise that is because if you are a guy dating, or a girl, doesn't matter, dating a high profile celebrity, surely it must dawn on you to dot I's, cross T's, and keep private things private. To be in a situation where somehow it's so easy for you to leak a very private moment accidentally, that is questionable to me, right? I don't necessarily buy that it's just I know accidents do happen, but I think, considering the huge ramification of that leak, it can go to all kinds of sites, including porn sites. It can, endless, forever and ever, blackmailing, things of that nature. Surely it can't be that you're not that tuned in to, if necessary, have a separate phone where, if you're going to be indulging in whatever you do behind closed doors with your partner, it stays that way. And then you have another phone for your business or whatever dealings. So the fact that it could easily be leaked on Snapchat like that, it's interesting to me. And so the question is, if a breakup happens, because no relationship is ever guaranteed, and half the time we see more breakups than we see people staying together, is the narrative going to change? Is it going to now be, this person did this evil thing, and so because this person did this evil thing, I'm going to come after the person? Or, that's what I'm concerned about. And I'm a little, it's just interesting to me. So we'll see what happens with that. There's a comment coming in from William Gary, and let's see what he's saying. In regards to the South Africa company moving into Nigeria, would it be safe to say that West Africa is driving the culture of the continent, rather than SA, who the West seems to prefer? Yes, absolutely. On that point, William Gary, my opinion is it absolutely, and just strictly looking at the numbers as well, we can see that over and over again. West Africa has been driving the culture specific to music. I think in other areas, especially fashion, you could argue that South Africa has had a very strong hold on driving the culture on the continent, very structured system, great with marketing and promotions of fashion. And of course, South Africa has very strong footprints, but for right now, in this moment that we are, West Africa definitely is driving the culture across the continent. So thank you for that comment. Thank you for watching as well. Really appreciate it. So back to the Tiwa point that I was just making. I'm concerned about that. I think down the line, we may see a very nasty situation where that, oh, my partner didn't really mean to do it, might change. And then the question is, what happens then? Especially if at that point, whoever the third party is that's trying to blackmail, or others that may have it, just go ahead and release that content anyway. So very interesting. But the moral of the story is, folks, what you do, especially if you're talent, especially if you're in the limelight, obviously what you do in behind closed doors is your business. We don't need to know that. Number one. And then number two, you should really emphasize to the third parties that you get involved with, um, you know, they should understand the nature and industry you're in to be cognizant of protecting you. Again, mistakes can happen. I'm just a little suspect of how this particular mistake happened. I'm not fully trusting that it was accidental. Just my opinion. Obviously, others might disagree with me, and that's fine too. I just think it's just way too easy to claim that that was just accidental and the way it happened, knowing the kind of high profile person that you're in a relationship with. So that's that on that. The other thing I would say is if you are in whether stateside or even some African jurisdictions, there are laws now, cybercrime laws. Nigeria has it. Certainly in the US, several states are having laws that are basically that prosecute individuals or persons who, individuals or other companies, etc. It doesn't matter. If you somehow put content out there that is private of a sexual nature that has no business being out there, of individuals who never gave consent to that, you could potentially be held liable. And the particular law is called revenge porn laws. Revenge porn laws. So you could look it up. And there's so many cases we've seen that have come out of the African entertainment industry. And overall, we've seen explicit denials by the persons who are alleged. Usually they're, in a boyfriend girlfriend relationship, and then things don't work out, and then you have one person that ends up leaking that intimate moment. It goes viral, and there usually is no recourse, and usually it's the woman in the relationship that bears the brunt of all of the abuse and end career, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to be careful. But if that situation happens, know that there is law enforcement, at least in the diaspora, that you can pursue with respect to trying to get some remedy out of it. All right, I think I want to take a quick break, and I will come back for us to talk about the two other matters that I want to talk about, which is specifically dealing with the Two-Face case on defamation, and then also the Drake lawsuit. So let's do a quick break, and we'll be right back. You are watching and listening to the AfricaMusicLaw.com show with yours truly, Ms. Uduak. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, folks. So we are going to round it off with this two last cases that I want to talk about. The Chris Brown and Drake lawsuit. Let me put it up here for y'all so you know what we are talking about. And actually, no, let's start first with Two-Face, and then we'll finish out with the Chris Brown and Drake lawsuit. So Two-Face Idibia threatens a 1 billion naira defamation lawsuit against Brymo. Who's Brymo? He's an artist, in my view, still emerging artist out of the continent, also from Nigeria, where a lot of this Afrobeats movement is happening. And who is Two-Face? Two-Face is a globally recognized music icon, also from Nigeria, and has done a lot. He might be considered at this point a legacy artist because he's been around for a minute, over 10 years. And yeah, I think going on 20 years. Yeah. And at this point in his career, he's he is in the exit stage of his career. So established at this point, exit stage, if you will. And one of the things I've said, I think 2 or 3 episodes ago, we talked about Two-Face. And one of the things I said is at this stage, I don't want to, from both from a fan standpoint, as well as industry insider, as well as looking at someone who one would consider very respected in the industry overall. I don't want to keep seeing Two-Face's personal shenanigans on social media. It's not helping or beneficial to anyone. We're at the height of music tech, fintech, a lot happening in so many spaces. And if you're comparing his counterparts you're seeing them get into, brokering relationships with tech companies, expanding their income streams, doing a lot more for the culture to drive the culture, among other things. We don't want to see our legacy artists, particularly our African legacy artists, the few and far between who've been able to get that global recognition and stay consistent with it. We don't want to see them talking half the time about their family shenanigans. So we just came from a huge viral global talk about Two-Face and his wife, who's also talent. She's an actress, accusing him of infidelity and all this other things. And it was just played out and so dramatic, right? We just finished that. And now we're back in the news again, dealing with specifically an emerging artist claiming that Two-Face basically accused him of sleeping with his wife. That is the allegation, right? So and what's interesting with that Brymo statement is that he prefaces it with the fact that he was, engaging in substance abuse, right? Specifically using drugs and I think marijuana or whatever else he was using. So going back to, I say, you handle reputation management and crisis management. We saw the Tiwa Savage stuff, Tiwa Savage scenario. I'm going to get in front of the story, right? Two-Face decide, I'm going to respond. That's fine if he chooses to. But now he wants to use a sledgehammer to kill a fly, right? So he's saying, I'm going to sue you for 1 billion naira. Really? Does it really amount to that? You're going to sue him for 1 billion naira for what? You know what I mean? Especially based on how he prefaces his allegation. I think a simple response that said, or something that said to the degree of, you know what, this artist already said that he was doing drugs at the time that, this alleged statement of me accusing him of sleeping with my wife happened, right? That he was essentially doing drugs during that time. So you know what, all the best to him. I wish him well, but it's not worth responding to. Even putting something out there would make sense. But now there's a whole back and forth with threatening a 1 billion naira lawsuit for defamation and all this other things. Now, assuming one could say he would file that and it goes to the court system, one thing we do know for sure is the Nigerian legal system, particularly when it comes to litigation, is ridiculously slow, right? So what is the ultimate goal when you go through that particular system, right? We had a case of, I mean, ultimately the end result might be beneficial to Two-Face, but I don't see in this particular instance, given the nature of the allegation per se, that it was worth responding that I'm going to sue you for $1 billion. Strategically, a response that could still have the same effect of just sort of saying this is such a waste of time would have been just as good. But 1 billion naira, I'm sorry, not $1 billion, 1 billion naira is still a lot of money in the context of the Nigerian entertainment industry. So I don't think that was necessary. And if you go through the litigation route, it's probably going to take a few years to have that resolved. So what happens then with all the bad publicity that's still out there? How do you deal with that? And I think for Two-Face in this particular instance, based on this particular set of facts, it could have been resolved a different way, right? And then it's one thing to put out one release, but I keep seeing more back and forth, answering back and forth with the artist. It's a total waste of time. I don't understand why that's even necessary with the continued back and forth. I think his management recently just put out yet another statement about that. It's just complete waste of time. And to be clear for everyone, defamation generally is when you make false statements about a person and generally, the plaintiff in this instance, and then it's published to third parties. And so you have libel where it's written, you have slander when you have an oral form. And when you have celebrities involved in the US and Nigeria as well, actually, in the US, there's a higher threshold, right? You have to show that the defendant was using or saying the statements they made with malice aforethought, right? So they said it specifically with malice. And similar sort of criteria under Nigerian law when you're looking at the analysis as well. So again, I just don't understand why that approach of we'll sue you with 1 billion made sense given the kind of allegation and how it's said, the context it's said, and the disclaimer that the individual was using drugs also, right? So I think that could have been easily resolved, or even maybe threatened lawsuit, but not necessarily $1 billion, because then it tends to seem to add more credibility to the story rather than just saying this is just a silly, ridiculous thing said by an artist who should be busy focusing on his music. And I couldn't be bothered wasting my time. So that's what I would say on that particular case. Let's see. The final one I want to cover is the Chris Brown and Drake being sued for copyright infringement over no guidance. And it's an interesting case. It was filed just this week. And specifically, the complaint is alleging that Drake Brown, so the no Guidance song was released in 2019, peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. And the allegation I found interesting is the plaintiffs, Cooper and Valentine, a singer and a producer, they're claiming that there were several elements from their song I Love Your Dress, including the lyrics and from the hook, that Drake and Brown copied. Specifically, she got it in I Love Your Dress. They compared to No Guidance's You Got It, Girl, You Got It, Girl. And they said there's she got it. They repeated that for 16 times. And they said for You Got It, Girl, You Got It, Girl, that was about 11 times. So I want you all to go check out the songs on YouTube and see if you find a similarity. I didn't necessarily think there was a similarity when I listened to it, but you may think it differently. And I don't know that saying she got it 16 times is the same as you got it, girl, 11 times. But it'll be interesting to see your thoughts on it when you get a chance to watch it. And feel free, this is immediately available for replay. So feel free to leave your comments in the YouTube comment section on this to tell me your thoughts on whether you think there's a similarity. Now, overall, when we're talking about copyright infringement, the fundamental thing you first have to know is that as a creator of a work, and usually you are categorized as an author, when you are an author creating a work and that work is fixed in a concrete form, if you're on the continent, a lot of the statutes in the different countries, the key music markets tend to say, fixed in a concrete form type language. In the US, it's fixed in a tangible medium of expression. So once it's fixed, right? So once we're done with this, it's fixed in an MP3, in a YouTube MP4 that you can watch. The person who creates it, my company is creating this. So since it creates it, it owns it exclusive to everybody else, with certain carved out exceptions of educational use, like I'm using it here, criticism, news reporting, etc. So that falls under fair use, and fair use only comes into place when you've actually been sued, you're in court, and then you have to deal with someone saying, oh my gosh, you infringed. And then you, the defendant, says, Your Honor, it's fair use, and you have to be able to outline that, and whether the judge or jury has to buy that, right? That it is in fact fair use. So as the author of a work, there's certain bundle of rights that are given to you, both on the US law and, of course, also looking at international law. A lot of laws mirror this. And one of some of the set of rights that are given to you are the right to reproduce your work, the right to distribute, the right to perform, the right to display, among other rights. So in this instance, reproduction of the work, you have to get the reproduction and distribution of the work, you have to get permission. Also, derivative rights, if you decide you want to do a remix of some sorts with the work or sample the work, you have to get consent. So what they're essentially saying is you didn't have consent to use my work, and because you didn't have consent to use my work, you infringed on it, and therefore in infringing upon it, you have to pay for it. So that's essentially what is going on. There's a whole different analysis on what that means in terms of how you prove copyright infringement. And also in the US, it's important you have to have federally registered the work in order for you to be able to march into federal court to sue for copyright infringement. William Gary has something to say. He says, doesn't he also have to be able to provide evidence that they had previous access and knowledge of his song as well? Yeah, that's one element of it as well. Substantial similarity, and part of proving that substantial similarity includes the access as well to the work. But you know what? The access to the work, it's been interesting on a lot of the analysis and rulings recently, where, and not just in this jurisdiction in the US, I'm also seeing it across, where more and more and more you're not, because access to the work used to be a lot, you're on the internet, access to work, so therefore you easily get access to the work, and it didn't require too much of a hard showing on that threshold. But nowadays we're seeing that that's not as easy to just say, well, my work was on the internet and my work was already known, so therefore he or she, at the defendant easily had access. You're starting to see that there's a lot more that a plaintiff has to demonstrate, not just, okay, yes, it was on the internet, therefore it was easily accessible to you. But great question. So anyway, that's overall what we're dealing with. It'll be interesting to follow and see the outcome of that case, but it's no different than so many other copyright infringement cases we've seen over and over again. And the moral of the story here is, try to make sure you get your copyright clearances, dot your I's, cross your T's, and ensure you have that first. And in the instance where that's being done and there are no similarities, and someone is claiming that there is infringement, then you have to hope that the courts and the jury sees it exactly the way you see it, so that way you don't end up having to pay damages for that work. All right, so I think I'm going to round it up there. We have spent about 45 minutes covering some of these cases. William, I want to thank you for joining and watching, and others who also have been watching, and those who will watch after, and the comments that you've shared as well. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you. If you want to, let me see, hold on a sec. Let me remove that. Okay. All right, so we will be back here next week. Next week, we will have a guest and who will be interviewing, but we go through different type of formatting, where sometimes it's just going to be me talking about the latest cases and giving my legal commentary and analysis, or having a guest, among other things, or having a panel. We switch it up different times. But thank you so much for joining. And remember that you can go to africamusiclaw.com to sign up for our newsletter. You can also subscribe to the show on all major podcast streaming platforms. It'll be made available on podcast this particular episode. You can also rate us on Apple Podcast, and that apparently helps with the search engine optimization to bring it up easily for others to be able to find it. And of course, visit africamusiclaw.com, where we cover music business, entertainment law news, legal commentary, and analysis. Thank you so much for joining. We will see you next week. Hold on, got to pull up this banner so that I can get ready to say goodbye. So we will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good one. Cheers.